The tall glass doors of the courtroom were all that separated her from justice. She was just a nobody, a young woman who walked into the courtroom with her head held high, but her eyes downcast. Shoulders slumped and hands clasped loosely in front of her. She was dressed plainly, and no one paid much attention to her. Even the judge didn't bother to look up from his paperwork as she took her seat in the gallery. He had seen hundreds of such cases, and he knew how they went. This one was no different. A nobody with a mountain of evidence against her. What could she possibly offer? The lawyers exchanged glances, a mixture of pity and amusement in their eyes. They knew what a quixotic mission this was, but it made for an amusing distraction. The trial was in full swing when she stood up. It was her turn to speak, to present whatever small piece of evidence she had to support her claims. But she wasn't prepared, not in the way one would expect. As she opened her mouth to speak, the room fell silent, every eye fixed on her. "Your Honor," she began, her voice echoing strangely in the vast space, "I am not here to represent myself." The judge looked up sharply, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. Was this another delay tactic? How was this supposed to help her case? Before he could dismiss her statement, she continued, "I am here representing justice." His eyebrows shot up in surprise. But before he could respond, she launched into her accusations, naming the judge directly. She spoke of his history of corruption, of the undue favors he had granted to certain individuals, and the unjust rulings he had made. She detailed instances where he had abused his authority, exploited his position, and betrayed the very principles of justice he was supposed to uphold. Each word was a carefully placed stone, building a wall of evidence around the judge, cornering him within his own courtroom. As she spoke, the air in the room grew thick with tension. The judge's face was a mask of thunder, his eyes flashing with anger and disbelief. He pounded his gavel, trying to regain control of the situation, but each of his attempts was met with a defiant silence from the young woman. She stood her ground, her voice unwavering, her gaze fixed on the judge. Finally, when she paused for breath, the judge, his face ashen, his eyes blazing, demanded, "Where is your proof?" She smiled faintly, reached into her briefcase, and pulled out a stack of documents. As she laid them on the table, a hush fell over the room. These were the very documents that detailed the judge's wrongdoings, the evidence that could bring him down. The lawyers gasped, their faces paling as they realized the gravity of the situation. The judge's empire of corruption was about to crumble. The young woman had presented her evidence. Now it was up to the jury to decide. The judge, unable to contain his rage, stormed out of the courtroom. Leaving behind the echoes of his authority and the stench of his fear, the news of the trial spread like wildfire. People talked in hushed tones about the judge's downfall and the brave woman who brought him to justice. The evidence she presented was undeniable, and the judge's career, once the epitome of success, was now a cautionary tale. In the end, it was the nobody who became somebody, the young woman who had been ignored and dismissed, who had the last laugh. Her quiet strength and determination had paid off. She had the courage to stand up to the most powerful man in the courtroom, and she did it without a shred of fear. Her victory was a testament to the power of truth. The judge, once revered and feared, was now a symbol of corruption and abuse of power. His fall from grace was swift and brutal, a public spectacle that left him stripped of his dignity and his reputation in tatters. As for the young woman, she walked away from the courthouse that day knowing she had done something extraordinary. She had taken on the most powerful man in the room and won. And in doing so, she had become more than just a nobody. She had become a beacon of hope, a symbol of justice, and the personification of truth.